So one reason I didn't talk about the entirety of the PlayStation showcase was because number one, I'm not really a big fan of them. I don't like showcases at all. The Microsoft ones, I'm not a big fan of. In fact, which is something that I'm going to say that's weird. As somebody who's not a big PlayStation Sony fan at this moment, I can actually tolerate their own showcases more than I can any other ones. I prefer that these games be chopped up and their individual trailers be shown, but I can also understand from a marketing perspective, and to be fair to developers who they benefit from their games actually going out, I can understand the benefit of them being in these kinds of events where there are a lot of audiences at the same time. It's a way for a lot of games to be able to get some limelight. Now, the one thing about this showcase that I wanted to go ahead and highlight is from the business perspective primarily. I know a lot of Sony participants in the gaming ecosystem have always taken pride in the fact that Sony makes these single player experiences. But it appears that this shift into the live service aspect is one that has been quite obvious for a while. But a lot of times, because it's not been put on the center stage, it seemed like it's been on the, in this invincible realm for the most part. But Business 101 dictates that because Sony is a publicly traded company, it has a fiduciary duty to actually make money for its shareholders. So some of my disclaimers. I own about $20 of stock with Sony and probably somewhere about maybe $50 or $60 or more dollars of Microsoft. These were purchased to show an example on how to, invest with Robinhood and other apps. So I bought it to show my students as an example. I have no, divestiture in any of, or I say I have no investments in these companies that I care about that are significant. So I'm just putting that out there because I talk about them. I don't want to have any conflict of interest of any kind. Now, seeing how this has already been marketed and advertised as, Jim Ryan came out here to say at the beginning of the event that, people are excited about this stuff and, he knows that fans are excited, but the developers have not yet scratched the surface of the gaming experiences. That's another, really interesting wording because the way he puts it makes it seem like developers have not scratched the surface of our PlayStation console, when in reality, he's basically sold everybody a 6700 non-XT GPU console that's only going to be, hardware limited as more and more games continue to come out and become more ambitious. So that's a whole another gripe I have with Microsoft and Sony because of their console. So that's a whole different conversation. But thinking about all of this, it's brought to light the fact that Sony needs to follow and pursue this strategy because this is where they think the moneymaker is. I understand that people in these ecosystems would love for Sony to continue to keep their old business model at the high rate that it's always been. But here's been the challenge. Releasing these single player games and publishing them coming solely from Sony has not necessarily been, in my opinion, as forthcoming as, say, staying competitive with all the other, publishers and the other studios out there. So here's the thing about the single player experiences. The single player experiences from Sony are good. I own most of them, if not all of the ones that have shown up, in the recent PS4/PS5 timeframe. And I've played a good number of them and I enjoyed them. But Sony is also in competition with the attention of other gamers with other publishers out there. They're not the only ones that are making single player games. And so when a game like Elden Ring shows up and literally eats all of the attention from a game like Horizon Forbidden West, then you know that we actually need to basically understand why they're pivoting into this entire, live service emphasis that they're actually putting out here. This is where I think many PlayStation gamers are not necessarily seeing the big picture. If you're in a PlayStation ecosystem, you like PlayStation, understand that even as much as you might be saying, Xbox doesn't have games, PC players don't really have much games, you got to understand that Ubisoft and From Software and all kinds of other studios and Warner Brothers, all the publishers are bringing out these single player experiences that are going to nick some of the attention that you have or will give to your Sony games, especially when you don't care about that Sony title that's coming out at the time. So this is why this pivot makes a whole lot of sense from a financial perspective. Another thing too is, if you think about the community of, investors, they are also well versed in this gaming scene. That's one thing people don't really understand is most investors are actually very adept in listening to the gaming conversations overall. They don't necessarily just sit there in their suits. They have a different interest. In fact, I think some investors are much more based than even the people who run these publishing companies. And this is something that may surprise a whole lot of people, because if you listen to earnings call meetings and listen to the questions from top investors, you're going to be shocked the questions that they actually ask. Like, based questions that even make the CEOs sometimes divulge information that they're not even supposed to divulge. Example of a more recent one was Warner Brothers CEO David Zaslav pretty much mentioning that a Mortal Kombat 12 game was coming out this year before even NetherRealms talked about it or revealed anything about it. Well, that's because it was imperative that the, investors knew what was going on so that they understood where their investment dollars were going. Another one in the past that just happened as well, when I say past, I mean maybe a few years, was when Ubisoft had decided that they were going to go ahead and scale down the Division or the Division 2 support. And then all of a sudden we found out that they were working on more Division projects, like a mobile Division game and a free-to-play Division game. And then they were going to continue to support the Division overall. It was because of a question from a high-level investor who said, how are you guys going to be able to figure out how to make any more Division future projects while you're making a Star Wars and an Avatar game? And then the CEO divulges all that information because these investors are paying very close attention. So what are the investors paying close attention to with Sony? Sony, why are you not competing heavily in a very potential profitable area in regard to the live service games? And I think Sony is starting to answer the question by bringing in what I call, or who I call, the kings of live service shooters at the moment. Now, you can say Activision, you can call Call of Duty or whatever it is, but Bungie used to be under Activision, so okay, whatever. Okay? Now, this particular article that is actually cited here was written in May of 2022. It says, after buying Bungie, Sony goes all in on live service games. And basically, this was pretty much what they were moving towards. In fact, in that investor presentation that is cited in this article, it says Entertainment CEO, Sony Interactive Entertainment CEO Jim Ryan, outlined a near future for the company that focuses heavily on continually updated online games inspired by Destiny, Bungie's long-running hit. Sony expects to spend 49% of PlayStation Studios development budget on live service games by the end of the year. Hoo-wee! By 2025, Sony plans to pump that up to 55%. There is a shift going on. Somebody told me a very stupid comment. I was about to reply, but I said, you know what? Let me not bother. They said, how much did Microsoft pay you to make this video? Microsoft doesn't pay me any money. The news and the entire evidence is right here in front of you. Remove your blinders because you just don't want to accept reality. And it says this, up from just 12% in 2019. By the end of 2025, Sony projects that it will have 12 different live service games of its own, up from just one now. This is where the shift is coming from. This is why you got to see this showcase. Many people are saying, oh, this showcase was a disappointment and all that. I'm like, no, the showcase was a disappointment to gamers who are well vested in the single player games, but to the investors who want to see what Sony is doing on the live service place, this showcase was absolutely perfect for them. This PlayStation showcase was an investor showcase. It was not a gamer-centered showcase. Do you get it? You seeing it? Because guess where they put the gamer-centered content? At the end of the showcase. Now, we could argue maybe they wanted to go ahead and, maybe put Spider-Man as the end, something that was basically going to top it off. Maybe that was the case. But they also put that Metal Gear stuff somewhere in the middle. But you notice that in sprinkling everything in, a lot of the live service stuff was just all over the place. They're signaling to the investors like, hey, we're going in. We know we told you just a while ago in some article that was written that we're moving it up 49% by the end of 2022 when this article was actually first written. Look at it here, May 26, 2022, about a year ago. So by December, that's when they were at December of last year. That's when they were moving these numbers. And by the end of 2025, they're going to bump it up to more than half. What does this mean? I know some people are probably tripping like, oh no, this is the end of everything. Calm down. It's not the end of everything. I understand that for many people, this is something that, in their minds could spell maybe the end of, the getting a lot of these fun games that they've been getting for a long time. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think we're going to continue to see really solid, games continue to come from PlayStation. It's not going to change. It's not going to, become one of these things where the whole publisher just forgets about what its core aspect of its gaming is. But what it does seem like is if the studios are not necessarily in a huge production schedule that they can be pumping out their single player games in quick succession, they might eventually, or they might be at risk of making them, become live service games developers, or they might become a hybrid studio. So this is what we're seeing, and examples would be Insomniac. I don't see them taking on a live service game. They have too much on their plate with the single player games. They're a brand focused single player studio right now. That is what, they are. That's the impression that Sony is giving us. They're working on the Wolverine game, seeming like they'll probably take another Marvel hero or continue the Wolverine franchise and the Ratchet and Clank franchise, or something that's actually fun. Or they may go back to one of their shooters from back in the day, something that they have in their library. In terms of Santa Monica seems like they're already hiring for another God of War movie. There was a news article the other day that actually, basically highlighted this. I can't find it at the moment. I'd have displayed it on the screen for you guys. But that's also where I see that going. Then you think about Naughty Dog, who makes these games once every 7 years, did not want to make another Uncharted game, or maybe just did not have the time to. They're getting shifted to the live service side because they already have a live service element going on, but seemingly they are hybrid, because not only are they making this live service game, they also confirmed that they're working on their other single player games. Guerrilla is working, or somebody around Guerrilla, maybe another external studio, is probably working alongside them to make something with the Horizon franchise. So this is what we're seeing, and it appears to me that eventually Sony might have a balanced portfolio, but they're not going to lose sight of exactly what's made their business grow. But seeing that their business is still growing and has already grown, they project that their single player side is going to continue to bring in gamers, but now they're focusing on the multiplayer, games as a service, live service stuff. And this is in light of Xbox basically closing the gap with, products and services like Game Pass, and Xbox already basically having a strong position with the multiplayer aspect of games. Sony could have leveraged this a long time ago because they already had the audience, but they were just enjoying other publishers like Bungie and Activision doing it with Destiny and Call of Duty. But now they want to jump into the game, so things are about to take a really interesting turn very soon. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you guys' time and audience. Hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.